21 cents. That's all a quart of fresh milk cost in 1955 America, delivered right to your doorstep by a man who knew your family by name. At the peak of home delivery in the 1950s, nearly 1 in 3 glasses of milk consumed in America arrived this way, brought by over 50,000 milkmen crisscrossing old American neighborhoods before most folks had finished their first cup of coffee. Do you remember that sound? The gentle clink of glass bottles being set on your porch in the early morning darkness? Do you remember racing outside in bare feet, hoping to catch the milk truck before it rolled onto the next house? Welcome to Golden Days USA, where we treasure the memories of simpler times. Close your eyes for just a moment and go back with me to those golden days of the 1950s and 1960s. The neighborhood is still. The street lights are just flickering off. And somewhere down the block you hear it. The low rumble of the truck, the squeak of brakes, and then those quick, familiar footsteps on the walkway. Those of us who experienced growing up in the 1950s remember exactly how this felt. The bottles themselves seemed to have their own music, glass against glass, settling into the metal carrier, cold and heavy in small hands when you brought them inside. And that milk, oh, that milk. You could see the cream right through the bottle, thick and golden, floating at the top like a promise. Some mothers skimmed it off for coffee, others saved it for whipped cream on Sunday pie. That richness had a taste that nothing from the grocery store could ever quite match. It tasted like freshness. It tasted like home. This was life before supermarkets changed everything we knew about daily routines. For those who remember what life was like in 1950s America, these sensory memories remain as vivid today as they were 70 years ago. The weight of those bottles, the coolness against your palms, the anticipation of that first cold glass at breakfast, these were the small treasures of everyday life in old America. Home milk delivery first gained traction in America during the late 1800s as cities expanded and families found themselves living further from farms. Before household refrigerators became common, daily delivery wasn't just convenient, it was essential. Milk spoiled quickly, and fresh meant healthy. This was part of how Americans lived before modern technology transformed our kitchens and our habits. But it was after World War II that the milkman truly became an American institution. Soldiers returned home eager to build families. New suburbs sprouted across the landscape, filled with young couples and growing children who needed milk by the gallon. This was the era of post-war America, when optimism filled the air and communities believed in bright futures. The milkman fit perfectly into this world of 1950s family life and order. He represented everything that era promised: stability, dependability, and the quiet confidence that tomorrow would be even better than today. He wasn't just delivering dairy, he was delivering peace of mind. If you've ever watched our video about things we took for granted in the 1950s or the simple life of 1960s America, you'll understand exactly why services like this meant so much to families. The milkman was part of an entire ecosystem of trusted neighborhood services that no longer exist, alongside the iceman, the bread delivery truck, and the door-to-door salesman who knew every family on his route. Let me take you through a morning, the way millions of American families in the 1950s lived it. This is the heart of our story, the lived experience that those who remember childhood in the 1950s and 1960s will never forget. It's 1958, perhaps a Wednesday in a quiet suburban neighborhood somewhere in the heartland. The sun hasn't quite risen, but inside the kitchen, Mother is already starting breakfast. The percolator bubbles on the counter, filling the house with that rich aroma that defined mornings in mid-century America. Father reads the morning paper before heading to work. The children are sleepy-eyed but getting dressed for school. "Go fetch the milk," Mother says, and one of the kids shuffles to the front door, still in pajamas. This was a ritual repeated in millions of homes across America, a small responsibility that taught children about routine and reliability. There it is, right in the insulated metal box beside the doorstep. 2-quart bottles of whole milk, their glass sides cool and slightly damp, a half-pint of heavy cream, a dozen brown eggs nestled carefully beside them. Everything fresh, everything perfect. For those who experienced growing up in small-town America, this scene needs no explanation. It was simply how life worked. The empty bottles from yesterday's delivery have already been collected. You'd rinsed them out the night before and left them in the box with a small note tucked under the cap, maybe requesting an extra bottle for the weekend, or letting the milkman know you'd be away next Tuesday. This simple system of trust and community in old America required no computers, no apps, no complicated scheduling, just honest communication between neighbors. This was the system, and it worked beautifully. No rushing to the store, no lugging heavy jugs home, just reliable clockwork delivery 3 or 4 times a week, year after year. Those who remember the good old days of the 1950s often cite moments exactly like this when asked what they miss most about that era. The milkman himself became part of the family rhythm, much like the friendly faces of 1950s neighborhood life that made communities feel like extended families. Many neighborhoods had the same delivery man for 10, 15, even 20 years. He knew which families had new babies who needed extra milk. He remembered which houses had dogs that would bark if he came too early. He knew the children by name, often slipping them a butterscotch candy at Christmas or waving from the truck window as they walked to school. This level of personal service was common throughout America before everything changed. The milkman wasn't unique. He was part of a network of jobs that disappeared from American life as progress marched forward. The Fuller Brush man, the Avon lady, the neighborhood grocer who extended credit to families he'd known for decades, all operated on the same principle of personal trust. A quart of milk ran about 20 to 25 cents. Butter might be 65 cents a pound. A dozen eggs, around 40 cents. Most families didn't pay daily. They kept a running account, settling up at the end of the week or month. It was all built on trust. Simple, old-fashioned trust. These prices from the 1950s seem almost unbelievable today, but they represented fair value in an economy that moved at a human pace. And those glass bottles, do you remember how solid they felt? The dairy's name embossed right on the glass, the little cardboard cap you'd peel off carefully. Some of us learned the hard way to shake the bottle gently before pouring, or else all that cream would come out first in one thick, glorious rush. These bottles have become vintage collectibles from the 1950s, treasured by those who remember their original purpose. Children would press those cold bottles against their cheeks on summer mornings. In winter, if you didn't bring them in fast enough, the cream would freeze and push the cap right up off the top like a little mushroom. These small moments defined what childhood was really like in the 1950s. Simple pleasures that required no batteries, no screens, no complicated instructions. Many of you who enjoyed our videos about forgotten American traditions and things kids did in the 1950s that would shock people today will recognize this feeling. The milkman's visit was one of many daily rituals that structured family life before television and technology dominated our homes. I'd like to ask you now, do you remember your family's milkman? Do you recall his name, his face, or perhaps the dairy name printed on those bottles? Perhaps you remember helping your mother rinse out the empties or sneaking a fingerful of cream before anyone else woke up. Please share your memories in the comments below. We would love to hear your stories. Your personal memories of 1950s America help keep this history alive for future generations. By the early 1960s, the world was beginning to shift. Refrigerators grew larger and more efficient, allowing families to store milk for longer periods. Supermarkets multiplied, offering milk in waxed cartons and later plastic jugs, often at lower prices than home delivery. This was part of how America changed in the 1960s, a gradual transformation that few noticed until it was nearly complete. The economics simply stopped making sense for many families. Why pay for delivery when you could pick up milk during your regular shopping trip? Slowly, orders dropped. Dairy companies merged, downsized, or closed their doors entirely. The milk trucks disappeared from our streets, one route at a time. This decline mirrors what happened to many American traditions during the latter half of the 20th century. By 1975, home milk delivery had become rare. By the turn of the century, it had nearly vanished altogether, kept alive only by a handful of specialty services and nostalgic dairy farms. The milkman joined the ranks of things that disappeared from American neighborhoods, another casualty of progress and changing times. It wasn't anyone's fault. Progress moves forward, as it always must. Convenience quietly replaced connection. Speed won out over ritual. And those beautiful glass bottles, once so common we hardly noticed them, became treasured collectibles, small artifacts from a slower, gentler time. Those who remember life before convenience stores understand exactly what was exchanged in this transaction. What we lost wasn't merely a service. We lost those moments of familiar routine. We lost the comfort of seeing a friendly face appear at the same time each morning. We lost that thread of trust that connected neighbor to neighbor, family to tradesman, day after day, season after season. This is why we miss the old days, not because they were perfect, but because they offered something we struggle to find today. If you've seen our previous video about why life felt slower in the 1950s or the lost art of neighborhood community, you understand that the milkman's disappearance was part of a larger shift in how Americans live and connect with each other. We gained efficiency, but lost intimacy. We gained choice, but lost familiarity. The milkman was never really just about milk. He was about a way of life, a time when communities felt like a family, when neighbors knew one another, and when trust was earned through small, steady acts of reliability. He showed up in the freezing cold and the sweltering heat. He remembered your family's needs. He smiled at your children and asked about your mother's health. In his own quiet way, he was a friend to every neighborhood he served. He represented the best of 1950s America: hard work, dependability, and genuine human connection. Today, when we find ourselves longing for simpler times in America, we're often longing for exactly what the milkman represented: genuine human connection, unhurried routine, and the dignity of honest work done well. These weren't grand things. They were small things. But small things, done faithfully over time, have a way of becoming precious. These memories matter. They remind us of who we once were and perhaps of who we still hope to be. The milkman's legacy lives on in everyone who remembers what made old America special: the patience, the trust, and the quiet satisfaction of a life lived at a human pace. For those of us who experienced growing up in the golden age of America, these memories are more than nostalgia. They are touchstones that connect us to our past and remind us of values worth preserving. The milkman may be gone, but what he represented, community, reliability, and personal service, remains as relevant today as ever. Thank you for spending these moments with us here at Golden Days USA, and remember, some things are worth holding on to, not because they can return, but because they helped shape the people we became. If this brought back memories, hit like and subscribe to Golden Days USA. We've got plenty more trips down memory lane waiting for you.